Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to day two of the FICCI eFrames 2020. We start this day with a session titled The Era of Smart TVs and Interconnected Home Devices, which Needs Smart Regulations. We have a stellar panel moderated by Ms. Vanita Kohli Khandekar, the contributing editor of Business Standard. The panelists for this include Ms. Megha Tata, Managing Director, South Asia, Discovery Asia Pacific, Mr. Winsley Fernandez, Chief Executive Officer, Indusin Media and Communications Limited, Mr. Adam Ruenek, Media Entrepreneur, Chief Growth Officer, Founder and Chief Executive Officer of Mode, Mr. Avinash Pandey, CEO of ABP Networks. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the panel, and Vanita, the platform is all yours.
Thank you so much. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. This is my first sort of instance of doing this on a Zoom platform. So please excuse any domestic sounds or anything that happens in the middle, which is not planned for. Winsley, I know you have 9 dogs there, so I'm hoping one of them barks and makes my boo-boo less obvious.
I've asked my guys to make sure the dogs don't bark.
Okay, you know, I don't know how many of you remember, and I think I really like this panel that I have because they all come from different perspectives. I don't know how many of you remember that in 2000, the Indian film industry got industry status. At that time, and I think that was after 60 or 70 years of various committees saying that, you know, it needs to get independent finance, it needs to get financing from banks if you want to clean up the act for the film industry. And that opened the floodgates because that meant the industry could borrow money from whether it was VCs, private funds, banks, etc. And the difference it made to the life of the industry, and everybody asked, I'm sorry, Adam, this is maybe completely random facts for you, but it's very well established here in India. 20 years later, you can see what this industry has done. You know, our shows are getting nominated for Emmys. Our films do very well in overseas markets. We just turned up. Domestic market is booming. I'm not talking about post-COVID. I'm talking pre-COVID. But we grew in size by like 8 times simply because of that one positive piece of regulation. And my point here is that is what good regulation does. It facilitates growth. And that's where we are coming from here. And with that, I'd just like to open the floor because, you know, there's this whole brief we have, but really, I think I would let Winsley, Adam, Megha, Avinash, I'm sorry, I'm taking the names in the way they appear on my screen, take it from there and mention where they come from on the value chain and what their approach is to the whole issue of and is it about OTT versus linear, or is it just regulation per se and what it should be doing for this industry? Vin, you want to take it?
Yeah, sure. Afternoon, and thank you, Vanita, for the introduction, especially about my 9 dogs. I've got people trying to keep them silent. But chances are they may bark at any point in time. But, you know, Vanita, you kind of hit the nail on the head. I've been across every piece in the value chain, whether news broadcasting, entertainment, hits, DTH platform, and now, of course, cable and hits. And, you know, you made the very valid point about is it OTT versus linear, or or is it just regulation on its own per se? See, I think the biggest challenge that we're facing today as an industry is that technology is racing, is way ahead of the curve versus regulations. Regulations are not able to keep pace with technology. So, you know, you've had linear television move to OTT, you've had television move to streaming, you've had linear television move to mobile and connected devices, but regulations have not been able to keep pace with the changes in technology. And that, I think, is the fundamental basis where someone like me coming from a linear background, our sense is we don't want new technologies like streaming or OTT or any of the newer technologies. We don't want regulations necessary to be pulled down to the level at which we are at. We're saying quite the opposite. We're saying there is a benchmark that is set. There is a new millennial, there is a new generation next who consumes content in all way, manner, or form, who does not want to see regulations beyond what they already have today. And we're saying that's fine. We're saying, please look at the linear industry and figure out, is there a way to now up the regulation parameter, or as you know, yesterday, in fact, the MIT secretary made a very good point about light touch regulatory regime. We're saying that light touch regulatory regime, which probably applies to the digital framework, if I may call it, or the digital platforms, I think needs to be applied also to the linear platforms so that it becomes, you consume data, you're watching news today on television, you step out of the house, it doesn't mean you're no longer connected to news. I mean, you'll go into an ABP, app on your mobile phone, or you'll go and watch discovery content on your tablet when you're anywhere. So all we're saying is that, I'm probably ahead of myself here, but I think what we're looking at is regulation. I think needs to be pretty much at parity across all platforms, but it does not need to be brought down.
I'm going to come back to you because as a distribution company, I think your entire outlook might be different, because if as a distribution company, you can be held responsible for content, a whole lot of those issues. Adam, sure. I'm going to come to you, and I'd like you to just tell this audience that what it is that Oxmote does, and then get into, where it is that you, in Canada and in the markets that you operate in, where it is that regulation is as far as digital goes.
Adam is on mute. Yeah.
That would have been more interesting if I spoke that way to everybody. my computer skills. So Oxmote is a DRM company, digital rights management. We primarily help people protect their IP from theft in the digital world. And our clients are Hollywood studios and distributors globally. We do reside in Canada, but we have clients in India and China, all over the world, 254 regions, basically. For us, we manage a very large portfolio of content, and we work with Google and YouTube and Facebook and a lot of digital platforms. I believe, I've been doing this for a long time. I initially started as a YouTuber type company. We worked with YouTube personalities, and we pivoted towards different type of storytellers, Hollywood and company. And the reason we pivoted towards there is we felt that when we joined YouTube, say 2010, we believed the current business model was going to change online. We believe broadcasters, stuff like Amazon Video Prime hadn't started. Netflix was just ramping up. Hulu, Roku, Disney Plus, none of that had started. But we thought it was going to go that way, and we made a great call by moving in that direction. But I can really tell you, I believe that regulation is needed. In my day, we've seen things come and go a lot. One day Vine was big, and then it wasn't big. At one particular point, YouTube could have been the Napster of video. It could have, unfortunately, it could have infringed on every piece of content, audio and video globally. But they came up with good policy and regulation that appeased content creators to help them make revenue off their content in an AVOD business model. AVOD is advertising video on demand as opposed to subscription based. And I do believe more regulation online is needed. It's still a bit of a wild, wild west. There are a lot of platforms out there that we don't currently work on, but don't have a way to protect the IP from theft, be it audio or video. And these types of platforms, unfortunately, aren't there protecting the IP holder, the content creator, him, her, or that corporation. I'm a big believer that smarter people than Oxmote are going to get together and come up with good regulation that helps the IP holder. It's not just about what we do today, it's about 2025, 2030. We see the amount of people coming online during this pandemic. The numbers are perplexing to us. We have such a large portfolio of content. We do billions of views a month. We don't even know, a lot of these bigger companies have been throttled. They're 720. So in a year or two, when we get the numbers from this pandemic, I personally, more people are going to be going online. Smart TVs with digital streams coming directly into their TVs, and these devices are changing everything about distribution. And I think protecting the IP holder, the content creator, I definitely think it needs to be regulated more globally. And there's going to be a lot more platforms coming up in the future we don't even know about. And some platforms will go away. That's just the way it is. If you've been doing this long as I have, you've seen them come and go. And we hope there's going to be a bunch of new competitors because it makes for educated audiences when people understand what we do. So that's kind of the stance of Oxmode in our forward thinking about, I think regulation is good.
Okay.
I do believe it has to be communicated well, though.
I'll come back to you on that because I think your perspective is different from what some of us here think. But Megha, first you from the discovery perspective and broadcast perspective.
Thanks, Vanita, and good afternoon to everybody who's listening in. Well, let's first, this is a transformation for the industry, and evolution of new ways of content consumptions and engagement are happening across the world. When you look at the Indian M&E industry, and we are in the early transformation, which is where technology is going to play a huge role in being a catalyst. Now, these changing consumer patterns are not only disrupting the business, Vanita, but have been now around for decades. And the rule of doing business are being rewritten. And that's a fact because this is how our whole industry is evolving. In all of this, while that was happening, the pandemic hit the industry. And that completely changed the conversations for all of us. But at this stage, I also want to compliment our in the sector, broadcasting sector, because we ensured that there's seamless services even during these pandemic time to keep people engaged during this.
Yeah, I think that was fantastic.
It was.
The screens were on, nothing went blank.
Nothing went blank. People were, news was there, entertainment really was commendable. There. So I think it's commendable as an industry.
I think the sector should take a bow for that one. Really,
I totally
all
agree.
DTH, cable, broadcast, all of them, OTT, all of them, really.
Absolutely.
Yes.
But it has further aggravated the situation of how the revenue has got impacted in these times, right? And it's been never like this before. And it's a first time for everybody, and I speak on behalf of the industry. I think the whole industry is reeling under the impact of revenue. And the immediate pandemic impact, the disruption is so fast that the M&E industry 5 years down the line, globally as well in India, will be very different from what it is today, and those are the conversations we're having today. And sector hence is in a dire need of a support from a regulator if it has to actualize the potential in the country. Yeah. And I'm making this very basic point here, Vanita, that M&E is a creative sector, not a commodity-based one. Okay, there needs to be an incentive actually for the players to pump in the millions of dollars, which we are doing to keep our consumers entertained. And this is a fact which I think as an industry, we all have been speaking about, and we need the support from the regulator on that. We are in India, I think we're probably the most regulated and broadcasting sectors in the world. We have some examples of the international broadcasting sectors, and India by far is the most regulated. And if we need to invest heavily in creating high quality and differentiated content for our consumers, we need to be given that ecosystem and environment so that we are able to deliver that. But unlike any other industry, the regulation does not permit the broadcasters and the owners of the content to frankly do that, because the MRP of our products are so regulated. Anything we do, whether we want to offer discounts to consumers, we are unable to do that. We are such a heavily regulated sector. Even to do some basic change in our organizations, we have to take permissions. So I think there is a need for a light touch policy in the country, which we have been talking about also in the past. And to me, that is a clear sort of request and recommendation to make this industry grow in the coming years.
Interesting. Light touch seems to be like the theme. Mr. Khare said it for us yesterday.
Yes.
And to a lot of the audience, you must know that even to change a brand name or a channel name or a logo, a broadcaster requires the ministry's permission. I mean, and there has been pricing regulation in television since 2004. And in a market where there are like 4 different technologies offering TV signals, so I mean, it just doesn't make sense. But anyway, we'll move on and I'll come back to that, Megha. Avinash, would you join us, please? Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. And good afternoon, those who are listening, taking the pain of listening to us as to what we think about regulation. See, the regulation and the industry has to coexist together to grow. Anywhere in the world, the regulator's job is to create a level playing field and to grow overall the industry. Unfortunately, in India, because it's a country of complain and ban, everybody wants to say what you are running in the content. Everybody has a say.
Yeah.
The largest department today, if you go to any news channel, is a department which deals with the complaint. Because we have created a self-regulatory body, News Broadcasters Standard Association, we receive a complaint, we say, no, we did not mean that. On an average, a news channel has to follow regulation of Cable and Satellite Regulation Act, which Government of India has given license to us on basis of that. We have to follow all Indian laws. Apart from that, Advertising Standard Council of India, Copyright Act, SC/ST Act, Protection of Children from the Sexual Offence Act, ASCII Guidelines, Code of Ethics, etc., etc. Apart from that, you have to continuously make sure that your directors, your logo, and everything is duly approved time to time from the ministry. So when minister talks about light touch regulation and the secretary talks about light touch regulation, I would like to see what are they doing, what my colleague just pointed out, to have a creative freedom for people. If you don't like a channel or don't like a content, today, thanks to Government of India, that you have got 300 channels to watch. Change the channel. Why to complain? If you don't like a content, don't watch it. If you don't like a book, don't read it. But entire focus today is to regulate what you air on the channel. And everybody has a voice of it other than the journalists who are actually today risking their life and going out and reporting.
Perfect.
And hence, when the whole game is changing from the linear, what Winsley rightly pointed out, that we had a linear TV at one point of time, which moved to digital, satellite, and now through mobile and OTT. The regulation is not up to date. For example, I'll give you, during the Pulwama attack, unfortunately, our soldier was captured by enemy country. And there was a violence, which was captured on video by enemy country, and it was propagated through WhatsApp, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. While as a responsible broadcaster, we were not airing it because it could have other ramification. But everybody in this country was already watching it. And then INB minister said that I know that it's already, everybody knows it, everybody has seen it. But as a broadcaster who is a licensed operator has to follow certain code of ethics, which does not apply to players who are unlicensed. Now, all over the world, the regulatory environment and the technology are at a different pace. You can never catch it. The technology is the solution. Allow people to follow, anybody who does business in India, to follow the basic criminal code, criminal penal code and the law of the land. And then see that how a news channel, a channel like Discovery, which produced meaningful content, entertainment content, as you rightly pointed out, was keeping people, insane, in senses during the COVID lockdown time, allow people to do their creative work within that freedom of expression. There are enough laws in India, and make sure that the industry or the business grow. All of us suffered during COVID. Our advertising revenue was down in the first month itself by 70% on average, if I can talk about the industry. News channels were down by over 50, 60%. Nothing has changed for us. We have to pay the same salaries. You have to keep people employed.
Yeah.
You have to run our businesses.
Correct.
So the regulator has actually not helped us in keeping our business alive. But
regulation to deal with the COVID situation is different from regulation which helps deal with the changes this industry is facing or the transformation it is facing. And I think because of COVID, I think a whole lot of these questions have come to the bubble to the surface much more than they would have earlier. You know, one of the things in India is that we look at regulation always from a content perspective. From Prism is always content, Avinash. So you're right, you know, whether it is creative, where is the creative freedom? And whether it's news channels which are allowed to do the journalism, good quality journalism, or whether it is television stations or OTT platforms which are allowed to produce the content that they want to. Why is that the focus of the Prism? I mean, it's ratings. It is what is telecast on news channel and how many bad words or how much nudity was used. I mean, these are the only things I see everybody get excited about. Why are these issues, has the industry represented to regulators on what it should be that, I mean, for example, NTO, the new tariff order, NTO in its second version makes no sense to me, but I don't know where the industry is on this. Have you talked to TRAI? Where are we on this? And before we get into this, Avinash, Megha, Adam and Winsley, I'd also like to tell the audience that if you have questions, please start posting them because I would like to ask them during the session instead of keeping 5 minutes aside, etc. for that. Yeah. So please start posting your questions. Yeah. Please.
I will tell you one thing about the regulation on the cable sector. While the regulator feels that it is doing in the interest of the consumer, there are coercive mechanisms which are adopted by everyone and many people, which is called the landing page, which is absolutely opposite to what the regulator is saying, that it is in the, I protect the consumer interest. It's not in consumer interest when you are forcing somebody to watch a channel for 40 seconds, 1 minute, the moment somebody switches on the channel. But
but then you're asking the regulator to change that, again invites the regulator into micromanaging the sector, which is a big problem with this industry, because the moment one lobby doesn't like something, the thing. But my broader question is, okay, let me put it this way. If there were 3 things the regulator should be looking at today, given what has happened, NTO 1, 2, everything, and COVID, what would it be? Win, Megha, Avinash. And Adam, I want you to come from, I'll ask you, I have 2 specific questions to you. I'm going to come to you. Win, first. Win, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
Yeah. So I think there are 3 things, and I'll rattle off all 3 things because I'm quite, they've been my 3 stuck record things for a while now, right? The first is making sure that when we talk about level playing field, everyone says, you know, what is level playing field, parity? I'm saying again, and I opened up with it, I'm saying don't, you know, straight jacket all the new technologies with regulations that apply to linear. Instead, allow linear to also grow to that level. And I'll give you a reason of why I'm bringing that up. So I'll try to encapsulate it. A lot of content on OTT has been defined and classified, Vanita, as edgy, right? The language that you said, etc. But the point is, it becomes a little odd when you're sitting at home, you're watching a movie you're watching, let's take an example. You're watching Game of Thrones on a linear television, okay, on a linear channel. That's the edited version with all the edits put in. Your daughter or your son is in the next room watching Game of Thrones on an OTT platform in terms of the uncensored language version. How does that make any kind of business parity? So I think but at the same time, you've got technology to be able to put in the appropriate parental controls.
Okay, so right? one is, you know,
raising the bar in terms of linear. That is first. Okay, Second, I think the regulator needs to, and the regulator has initiated this. Again, I'm very happy that the regulator and the MIB initiated the entire concept of infrastructure sharing. That is very, very important for the industry to survive and grow. Megha spoke about the industry. You started, you know, Vanita, about the industry in terms of creating jobs, etc. One great thing for the industry to survive and grow is infrastructure sharing. There is a consultation paper that is out. There's a fantastic recommendations paper that's come out. I think it's time now, especially with the backcloth of COVID-19, for the MIB to now notify the infrastructure sharing document, because I think that is absolutely
fair enough. So, and what's the third?
The third thing I think boils down to, again, in terms of the laws for different segments. You started with, there are 4 different platforms. There's cable, hits, satellite, DTH, there's also OTT. I think, again, allowing each one to grow within its own framework and allowing self-censorship, okay, the light touch regime. I think it is not a critical, how do I put it? It's not a deal breaker, but I think it's something, again, we've been talking about. What do I mean by that? I mean things like right of way, right, for laying fiber. You just mentioned, Vanita, and let me tell you, what a fantastic thing. 1,200 staff of ours, 35,000 cable operators and their staff, throughout COVID-19, have kept television in your home alive, right? 35,000 cable operators and 1,200 staff, I'm talking about from our company alone, have kept it through, alive. We have lost 3 cable operators, okay, to COVID-19, right? Our staff are taking all precautions. Why? Because they ensure that people stay at home, and they ensure the fiber to your home is connected. They ensure you're getting television at home. They ensure that this call is happening. And the point is, I think they need to be given the right that if a fiber breaks somewhere, if a fiber gets cut, the amount of hoops that they've got to go through, I think that industry...
So that comes back to the question of infrastructure, right. Facilitating...
Yeah, but that's infrastructure sharing. I'm talking about here infrastructure laws itself, which facilitate the growth of the sector, as Megha also pointed out. So I think infrastructure sharing is one thing, infrastructure facilitation, and then as I mentioned, the parity of play, right?
Okay,
yeah.
Okay. Adam, I want to ask you here, when you say you need regulation, you're also coming from the IP and the content perspective, correct? And especially piracy, because that's one big issue with all your clients.
Adam, you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I'm much better on mute. Again, I normally the running theme. So most of our clients, it is a theme that, piracy globally is just a massive industry. It's worth more than actually the pay part. But I do come from the perspective of regulation in protecting the IP holders. Whoever creates content needs, this conversation, I hear many different themes of this conversation. But one of the things, I've noticed in my time in the digital world is no matter what happens and how much we hate it, you use the example of your kids in the other room. That's the thinking we have to be thinking about for the next 5 to 10 years. A lot of the stuff that I work on a day-to-day about, we built some software and we help our clients, is what's coming next. Unfortunately, COVID has sped things up in our world. If Amazon didn't hurt your company before COVID, it sure did hurt it while COVID's on. It has destroyed businesses and I look at a lot of G8, G20 countries where we do a lot of work, and it is, digital distribution of products and content itself, audio or video, is killing companies. It is just moving so quick.
What is the regulatory approach in these countries? For example, in Canada, in the US, what have you found about it?
It's different in different countries, as well as in the EU and in India. The EU has an umbrella, privacy law now. Google itself has been self-regulating and going above and beyond what regulations in Europe or India or US, Canada have been doing. The people who created Google, the founders of Google, even though they just left the company this year, but until this year, they always went one step farther. Some people liked it, some people didn't like it, but at least they were taking a chance by regulating and creating guidelines. From our side, from a business perspective, especially a lot of times I speak from a revenue perspective. If we don't get the guidelines, it's going to be the Wild West and we're going to lose because because corporations that create content need revenue to make more content, to supply the audience, the kids, with what we hope they want to see, and some educational or some content that we build just because it is for the kids. We want the guidelines. We want to be notified.
Okay.
We want to be on, we want regulation in that sense.
That's interesting. We're coming from a different perspective. Megha, have I lost you? I'm only seeing your picture.
Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think.
What are your 3 things on your wish list? 3 things which you think going forward are imperative if this industry has to first come back to normal and then fulfill its promise of generating jobs and taxes?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I wish it was that simple to just put some 3 things and things will happen. I think we should just get in a bit of perspective. I mentioned about the light touch policy, right? Let me also give you an example of what I mean by light touch policy. When you look at, and you were talking about international examples, look at countries like Netherlands, USA, and UK. Okay, they all are following adopted a light touch regulatory approach, and which has helped promote competition and growth of the industry. None of these countries have had regulation governing fixing pricing or discounting of the channels in general. And these broadcasters have a larger freedom to negotiate contracts with operators for the sale or the channel packages, and these are very evolved economies and evolved industries in these countries. In fact, to take the Netherlands example forward, there are no regulations which mandates that a la carte package or subscription package in these countries have to be implemented. In fact, a few years ago, there was a debate which did take place in Netherlands, and there was a sort of a poll which was conducted by the consumers, right? And where they were given an option that would they be preferring a la carte versus packages, and 98% of them voted for a bundled option. Right, because there was benefit in choosing those for them as well. There was more choice for them, and they have through these years realized the importance of light touch approach to inspire that confidence in the industry and to grow competition in the sector. So unfortunately, we are very restrictive on that. Here we are saying this is how you should package it, this is how you should price it. There is no control the broadcaster has. And how do you
scrap pricing control and take out all the bundling limitations and a la carte limitations in NTO? I think NTO needs to change drastically if things have to move forward as far as this.
And to add to that, Vanita, I mean, look at the world we are living in. Who can, you have to create policies when you're in such restrictive policies when you know what is probably going to be the future. You don't know what's going to be. How do you create these policies which are so rigid and let the market forces decide, know what people want to pay for and how much they want to pay for. What I find
amazing, I so agree, Megha. What I find amazing is about half the things viewed on OTT, for example, which everybody goes on bleating about, is linear television content. Exactly. So that same content is madly regulated when it's aired on linear.
Absolutely.
But it's perfectly fine when it goes on to it. I mean, I find that ridiculous. So what is the incentive for the broadcaster to keep that linear structure in place? Of course, there's a lot of growth in India. Linear is still growing like crazily, so it's a good place.
Sorry, still, there are 100+ million homes without television today. So linear is going to stay in this country. It's not going to go away, right?
Absolutely.
So how do you create an environment and an ecosystem to let them flourish? You can't restrict it so much, right?
Correct. And okay, I'd love to engage more with you on this, because this is like, I find this very upsetting at some levels. But Avinash, I need to get you in, and if there's a wishes you want to share, and then we are getting questions here, so I'd like to start with some of those also.
Okay.
3 things. Can you?
So quickly, I'll tell you. Okay. First of all, I would refer to what Uday said yesterday, that it is a current regulatory environment has made it almost impossible for us to sell a pay channel. And that's why there is an over dependence for advertising sales for any company to run their businesses, which is completely lopsided as we look at and what Megha rightly pointed out, that if you start regulating prices on what we sell channel at, it's like it's not a food subsidy stamp. That people are necessarily need to watch a particular channel only in certain, I mean, you cannot bundle the product. I mean, you don't do it for any other industry. Why are you doing it for television? So I think the first thing—
unnecessary channels. They have used the word unnecessary channels, not important channels.
Who decides what's unnecessary?
Exactly. Sorry, Avinash.
Yeah. So I'm saying that, the first of all, the government, my belief is that the government should not interfere in the businesses. Everybody should follow the law of the land. But if you start doing micromanagement of the sector,
absolutely,
what rate you should sell your channel at, who you should reach to, what kind of content you should run, what you should be aware of, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can't— there are now laws being framed where arbitrarily a director clearance from the Home Ministry could be cancelled. I mean, and we have opposed that. We have given our suggestion to the government that this is, if the government wants to move towards a light touch, then this is a problem. Second thing, what I am looking at is that the regulator should help linear television by deregulating it instead of focusing on regulating the OTT content.
Correct.
As Winsler rightly pointed out that, instead of regulating OTT, please deregulate this so that there is a balance. There is a, our children are watching Netflix and Amazon Prime or Hotstar. What they are watching is created by the creative people, while what we are watching is determined by the regulators. It's not a level playing field.
And by advertisers.
And we are huge. We offer huge employment opportunities. So it's a sector which is going to get disturbed. Third is that for the news broadcaster,
correct,
please stop complaining.
That you have to tell your viewers.
I mean, the government has to help us, because if half the time we are dealing with a complaint.
I think
apart from that, if you give me opportunity, I would like to ask a few questions, if I may. That what do you think, to you, Vanita? What do you think the TRA as a regulator has been able to do to help the industry during the COVID time?
Honestly, I've not looked at what they've done during the COVID time.
Because you not find one.
But I don't think, I think the TRA, I don't know if you were there, I was there when the TRA became the broadcast regulator in 2003, 2004. It did bring some sense of order to what was a Wild West. What Adam is saying, that we need regulation. The Indian television industry was, and Winsley, I think, was there. Megha was there. We were a bit of the Wild West, and it brought order. Having said that, I think the first big, if I may use the word mistake, was, and on part of the industry and on part of the regulator, was setting the precedent with price regulation in 2004. The moment you did that, you have handed a huge micromanagement tool to the regulator, who's not letting it go. In spite of all evidence to the contrary, he or she is not letting it go. Adam, it's very funny. You are talking about regulation in the online space, and I completely agree. You need some sense of order there, and here we are choking because everything is being decided for us. But then I think part of it is a country specific thing. That's how broadcast regulation has operated in this. My question, before I go on to this question, from very interesting question has come in, or maybe I'll ask my question later. Let's ask this question. With the ban of Chinese apps, do you think there is an opportunity for Indian companies to capitalize? It's a question from one Mr. Ganpati, who I don't know who he is, but he's asked this question. Any of the broadcasters or anybody would like to take this on?
I could sort of attempt.
Yeah.
Well, I think there are two different things. There are, yes, there is an opportunity to get the Indian players, seeing an opportunity in this space as well. But I think this is a larger issue which needs to get probably addressed. I don't know whether banning apps like this is going to really achieve the objective which has been set out there. But one is hearing certain rumblings of certain other competitive Indian originated apps which are taking that particular space, but the difference is so high. So I don't know whether there is something which can be overnight a success, and it's an opportunity definitely, but the quality of content and the quality of product is the key here. The reason a certain product from that market has done well is not just because it is made in China, but it sort of made it,
and it met a need.
It in the quality and service it brought to the table. So if there is a product can match that, why not?
Avinash, Winsley, Adam, if you would like to weigh in on this
Vanita,
one.
See, the absence of a particular product does not necessarily mean that a better product by the indigenous people can come out on its own. There are strategic reasons which government of India banned these Chinese apps. I'm not getting into that, but fundamentally, I believe that a free market is always the best place for entrepreneurs and innovators to create best products. I have so since the issue is about the digital and the television regulation, I would like to come back to you, Vanita, on this. If you look at it, the government of India said that you are an essential service. Winsley, Megha, and I, who work in an industry, worked in essential service. Okay, and these essential services were shut down. People died. People got infected with COVID. Their entire family got infected. We are still struggling for people's infection. People have lost jobs. What did the regulator do? On the other hand, you are saying they implement this regulation in B2B through price control and etc. and all that. What it has led to, that small network like ours, okay, cannot go pay. When you cannot charge for your content, it has started degrading the quality of the content.
Absolutely, but that's been the nature of the business for the last 16, 17 years.
Ways and means in which it can help us create better product, reach to large number of people, and charge a price which market forces should determine.
So facilitative is a facilitative role is what
is not a food stamp.
When you want to
created by entrepreneurs.
No, I think Megha's point and even Avinash's point on the app is quite clear. It's not easy to kind of, develop something overnight to a certain international level, right? These all have come out of the business plan, etc. But having said that, Vanita, I think the situation, whether it's political or otherwise, I think it always gives rise to the potential of an entrepreneur being able to do something that could actually end up with a string of benefits which earlier probably were not there, right?
You can get your Weibo or your Baidu or your Tencent or whatever it is, the equivalent that China has.
Yeah. And I certainly think seeing the level and quality of technology across the country that we have, and developers, fantastic young developers across the country, I'm sure that there will be that opportunity. But whether it's going to be grabbed with both hands and how long it'll take to do so, as Avinash said, it's not just an overnight thing that can happen.
Adam, one of the things I wanted to ask you, especially because YouTube is the largest OTT in India. I mean, they're at whatever 280 or 290 million, I think, uniques. And then there is, of course, MX and Hotstar and all the others. Many of these companies, whether it's a Facebook or a Google, they have they're building, or Amazon, and these are three good examples. They're building their own ecosystems, So the content is coming in. It's not a closed ecosystem; it's an open ecosystem. But there is an ecosystem. So now it's whether it's commerce, whether it's payment, whether it's watching video, whether it's chatting with friends. So there's an entire ecosystem being built. Is the way you look at companies like these, and the way you look at linear or traditional broadcasters who may or may not have a digital play. So a Star or a Disney or a Discovery have very strong digital plays, but they are not doing the same things, let's say a Facebook or a Google are doing. How do you look at them differently? I mean, from a regulatory...
From both regulation and global distribution, I don't know what the roadmap is in the future. I just, as as growth with our company, and we have to make strategic calls on working with certain platforms, and we have to understand what's going on globally from every country in the world, not just by population of viewers, but you know, from a regulation point of view, we as a company have to make sure the companies we choose to work with, you know, have moral standards and stuff like that. In governments and global governments, they help suggest what those regulations are. I agree. Some of the new stuff, it's for us, it's hard to prioritize who we should be working with because we do have a large amount of content we work with. But we try and, you know, a lot of the linear stuff, we work with a lot of people who still do very well with traditional distribution, but we see it's being strained, right? Their government's not supporting him. I actually you know, you just recently were mentioning is they were strained for health reasons and had no support, but are fully regulated. And that has impacted what they're about to create in 2021 and 2022. Everything is going to be slowed down for content creation because of governments. That's not a good thing. But we've seen Netflix, you know, and Amazon Video Prime, they picked up billions and billions of views in the last 6 months. And Disney Plus has launched. A lot of these things might not work in the future. I don't know. Companies like Spotify are now doing video, just announced a couple weeks ago. Netflix, in my opinion, should do audio. They're doing video, do audio, converge. Or Netflix and Spotify should be one company. These companies are global. And the example of your child watching it in another room and seeing a completely different show, but the same show with zero regulation because it's digital, is happening globally. And we have a front row seat to this. We have a lot of insights because we run a lot of content that we can see from different genres, and a massive shift is happening. And, you know, regulation is being treated because of this.
Okay. I'm getting questions in. Sorry, Avinash, I know you have a very valid point there on what the regulator did during COVID. And honestly, I have no idea what they did. So if it's a stupid answer, but there it is. There's a question from a lady called Sonia. She says, do you realize that, there is a question which was very good. To Adam. Adam, do you feel end-to-end encryption on platforms like Telegram is a challenge for any regulation to tackle piracy? If so, privacy standards such as end-to-end encryption be diluted by regulation, because then the issue then is that pirates would move to another more secure platform which enables encrypted file transfer.
In my day, I do believe it's a problem, as well as ad blockers for AVOD platforms. Globally, you know, if you divide the world into you know, some countries that have more money that spend $5 on a coffee, and some countries that live off $5 in a day, that we know that AVOD is going to be more popular there. People are not going to pay $9.99 a month for Netflix. It's just not going to happen. But I've been around long enough to see these platforms come and go when it comes to piracy. And I do agree, encryption and privacy, people will always share with peer-to-peer content. But globally, it is such a small percentage because bandwidth is a big issue. In India, you guys have 480p. Globally, it's been throttled due to COVID because of all the usage, where YouTube's at 720, and it's available in 4K and 8K, but nobody can see it currently because of the throttling that's going on. But end-to-end sharing and piracy, it's not going to stop. It's been around since I was a kid, and it's going to be around for a long, long time in the future. But they don't last. They jump from platform to platform. I've seen it so many times. We get asked that similar question every time I do guest speaking or a panel. Everybody talks about LimeWire 20 years ago and whatever is going to happen 10 years from now. It changes fast. It's a massive shift, except the carriers can block it now, and regulation is helping that. So the block of those apps is not happening by the host, it's happening by the carrier, by regulation.
Okay, that's interesting. There's a question from John of Evia, who's a legal mind, who's a real brain on legal stuff. He says, if the next chairman of TRAI were someone with real industry experience instead of an administrative officer, a senior administrator, would it be helpful? Is there any hope for ever breaking the bureaucracy's hold on regulatory bodies? The three Indians on my panel, if I may use the term loosely.
Yeah, I think to some extent, yes. I mean, maybe there is a benefit in having somebody who understands the industry and its challenges, because one size does not fit all in this space. And in as much as an administrative mindset is always good to have from theoretically, but when you're involved in a particular industry, you've got to understand the industry issues as well. It's not a procurement business wherein you just buy in bulk. There is each channel, each organization, publisher, broadcaster has its own set of issues. So to know that is definitely going to be one of the benefits, I would say.
But who the cat is the where do you start by getting a non-bureaucrat to become head of TRAI? So I don't know. Avinash, when you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, actually, go on, Avinash.
Sorry, Vincent, go ahead. Go ahead, Vincent.
Okay, thanks, Avinash. See, I think the question, the way the TRAI was structured, if you recall, was basically, as the name suggests, telecom. Right? I mean, the entire focus was telecoms, correctly so, because that was and is a huge industry. Broadcasting, I think, comes in with its own set of challenges, which is completely divergent, Vanita, to telecoms. I'll give you a simple thing, right? In telecoms, you don't necessarily have, Adam spoke about it, Megha spoke about it, and even Avinash. You don't necessarily have piracy. Now, I'll tell you, piracy in broadcasting can be as so simple as someone in a far-flung area in India taking a set-top box, downing a feed via DTH, and then redistributing that channel to all his, everyone there in Little Hamlet. Now, that is as divergent in terms of an understanding of...
Absolutely. That came in a crisis. I think the cash crisis was happening. Right? In fact, the whole pricing mindset comes from telecom.
So I think that would really, to the challenges we're facing, piracy, I think is it's killing the industry. Security, as Adam pointed out. I think, so I kind of...
I'll quickly make my point. See, the bureaucrats and the government, they speak two different things when they are in opposition or not on their seat, and when they occupy that seat, there is a different voice at all. There is somewhere problem in the system, and hence putting industry experts within the panel, etc. I do not know what Winsler rightly pointed out. The way it is structured is an issue. People are very intelligent, informed, and educated. They are the best administrator in the country, if I can tell you.
Yes.
But when they occupy that seat, the way it is structured, they get into areas which they should not. The telecom regulatory, as Winsler rightly pointed out, was designed to regulate the telecom industry. Look at the telecom industry regulation and look at the regulation in the broadcast industry. Every single regulation in the broadcast industry has ended in litigations. While in the telecom industry, it has not. Okay, it has been smoothly accepted, and everybody in the telecom TRAI also accepts it. Why it is like that in the broadcast sector, everything is litigated? Because of what Winsler rightly pointed out. The issues are very different.
The industry is different.
These are far more. And the creative mindset, which requires to protect the copyright, has never been addressed. The freedom of expression has never been addressed, and that's where the problem is.
Okay, great. There's one question here. Do you realize when we say interactive TV, it means user participation? How do you think of truly regulating interactivity in an omni-channel world? Adam, I think you're smiling, which means you have something up your sleeve.
Well, we've been talking about interactive TV for a while in the digital world, where people can purchase merchandise via the channel, via whatever content he or she is watching, from my nice, beautiful shirt here to anything you want. You just push a button. How it's going to be regulated is a completely different conversation, and that's going to take a lot of smart people, probably a lot of time to get that one right, because the impact is huge for consumers in merchandise, in revenue streams. And there's going to be a lot of mistakes and a lot of fraudulent kind of stuff that will happen. Any type of new tech, it needs to be iterated very fast. It moves so quick in this world that as soon as you're eligible for some sort of brand new interaction via video, the fraud comes with it just as quick, unfortunately. And we have the potential to regulate quick, but we move slow for some reason. And then we complain and talk a lot, but the change is happening in front of our eyes, that I believe that it needs to move quicker, especially when it comes to, we call that transactional video on demand, TVOD. And those types of transactions that we're seeing people experiment with right now.
That's what many of these guys with the big ecosystem, the Googles, the Facebooks, the Amazons of the world. Amazon, of course, was built on transaction. That's what they're building. You don't know. And in India, we've seen Zomato, Flipkart. I mean, you see so many of them building a video ecosystem because so whether it's media supporting a transaction business or transaction supporting the media business, the blend is happening in many, many businesses across the world.
Agreed.
There's one question. Can we have, okay, I've been told we can stretch it to another five minutes or more. Can we have a better and more effective civil society controlled non-governmental regulator? This is from S. Biju of Asianet News. I must add here that for many years, I have advocated a not controlled by government, independent media regulator for India. Just like we have SEBI, the Securities and Exchange Board of India, or the IRDA, we need an independent regulator which is independent of the government to look at media as an industry. And because what you do in television could have an impact in OTT. What you do in newspapers could have. So, things are interlinked. There are companies which have all these businesses. Things are interlinked to a great extent and to have an overarching. But I'd like your take on this question. A better and more effective civil society control, I'm not sure how good that or bad that might be, non-governmental regulator.
So
I'm a huge proponent.
Yeah, sorry. Adam, you were saying something?
I'm a very big proponent of it. I believe there has to be non-government body. I'm really big. I have a big opinion on that because everybody has
an agenda.
Potential to be, their subconscious, even if they don't believe it, is affected. And non-government should have a seat at the table, if not more than one seat at the table, which will help. I personally believe it'll increase the potential for a fair playing field for both sides, the corporations and the government. That's the way I feel. I've always been, being an entrepreneur, I guess you're an optimist and you believe they'll do the right thing until it happens, and then you wish they would have consulted, the other half, the non-regulatory bodies who maybe are not funding certain decisions, in my opinion.
Yeah, sorry, Avinash, you wanted to say something, and anybody else?
No, I completely bang on. What you said is absolutely, that is what we should look forward to. Meanwhile, we are doing this through the VCCC and BSA, regulating both the content of the different genres. Yeah.
When Megha, you are on a non-governmental, independent of the government regulator.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, that's how we've all been saying that as well, that, either you have somebody who understands the strategy or take them out completely and don't mix the two agendas and let it be independently regulated space, and have the industry experts to be part of that body. I mean, it's a simple logical thing. Like if as we run our businesses, when you're making decisions of what kind of content to be made, you don't talk to the finance head who may not understand creativity, and vice versa. So you talk to the experts who know their space, and that's how this body should be comprised of. Ideally without having any pressure of any kind, independently, purely for the benefit of the industry, to grow the industry. Of course, regulation is important, but it doesn't have to be a wild west setup as well. But Correct. It needs to be run by people who know what part of the industry. That's how simple it is, actually.
Totally. And I think there are enough models are available around the world. I mean, you look at Ofcom. I mean, one of my favorites is Ofcom. I'm not sure now these days Ofcom is also Adam his expression is saying something. I don't know whether he has an opinion on Ofcom, but there's Ofcom, there's FCC. So there are a lot of models. When you wanted to say something before?
I kind of have a slightly different viewpoint here, and it comes from the fact that I've worked in every segment of this industry, right? Content, distribution, delivery, everything. I think there is a need for a strong regulator, right? Mm-hmm. Because whatever we may want to believe or say, Vanita, I have experienced it, and very often you do need someone who can deal with the industry in a firm hand. However, having said that, I think what what we are talking about is that there is nothing wrong with expanding that panel to include experts from the industry, right? Because a hybrid model, see, for example, the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting, it's a very progressive approach because they focus specifically on information and broadcasting. I think the same thing from a regulator perspective. If you're able to have a broadcast or broadcast cable and satellite BCAS kind of council, which has a healthy mix of people, either represented from the industry, people who understand the lay of the land, I think that's even better, because you still need to bring about legislation. You still need to be able to push, because as Adam mentioned, there are still parts of the segment, Vanita, and I've experienced them personally. There are still parts of the industry which are akin to the Wild West even today.
Yeah, they must be. They must be.
And I think that is where the support of a regulator that has
a platform. There's a huge opportunity for government here and us.
Correct. Absolutely.
This time will never come back.
Absolutely.
We must act. We must deregulate, and we must make enough incentive for the content players to create world-class content. We can become a world leader in content creation.
Absolutely.
Deregulate,
lighter touch. Yeah, sorry, Megha.
Sorry, Vanita, just adding to Avi's point that, this is the time to rethink, reimagine. Yeah. I mean,
well said.
This is about, maybe then, the universe has given us this opportunity to revisit the way we have been doing. Pandemic has created this huge challenge for our industry. But maybe this is where a new revised version of industry and the regulator can come on to board, because let's forget what has happened, right? Let bygones be bygones. Let's look for the future. Let's see how we can make this business and our industry a more robust industry so that we continue to entertain wonderful.
Absolutely. On that note, thank you so much, everybody. Thank you. You've been a wonderful panel. I've learned. And I hope Adam didn't get bored totally out of his skull because there's too much of India talk happening. But you're the odd man out on this one, Adam. So, all right. Thank you so much. Thanks. I'm getting hectic notes.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank
you.
It
was a wonderful session. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
It was very invigorating as well. I'm sure people learned a lot. We discussed a whole lot of topics, a whole lot of issues as well. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. We now break for lunch. We'll be back here at 3 o'clock and see you at 3 for the next session.